So now I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this, but there has been a kind of beef or feud that has been going on between Sam Harris and Ezra Klein. Now, Ezra Klein is an editor at large at Vox. And of course, you guys know Sam Harris is a neurosurgeon and someone who is a very outspoken atheist, and a very big public figure, of course. Now, I wanted to get into this kind of argument and what's going on. It's something that is interesting, but the disagreements here are very obscure, and I'm going to get into what I've kind of broken the disagreements down to, and we're going to look at what's going on here. So, what started this whole thing is Sam Harris brought on Charles Murray on his podcast. Now, if you guys don't know who Charles Murray is, he had wrote this book called The Bell Curve, which essentially advocates these policies based on this information. One of the policies was for the government to stop subsidizing low IQ people because they're going to have low IQ babies. So now Sam says that the reason that he had Charles Murray on was because Charles Murray went to a college, and every college that he goes to speak at, essentially, he gets kind of attacked by a mob, which is completely wrong, by the way. He should not be mobbed or shut down when he's speaking at a college. But one of the hosts or something like that actually received a concussion and some really bad injuries. So that is something to absolutely be condemned. Even with the most disgusting people, you don't have the right to take away their free speech. They can say whatever they want as long as they're not making direct threats of violence and different things like that, or disturbing the peace. So that should not happen. And that's what Sam Harris says is his reasoning for having him on. Now, of course, The Bell Curve is a book that has caused a lot of controversy that has been going on to this day, and I've talked about it a few times. And Ezra Klein went after Sam Harris for kind of facilitating him by having him on, and obviously against Charles Murray as well. Now, I'm sure you guys know about Sam Harris because he's had a lot of feuds with people. He's feuded with Reza Hassan and Glenn Greenwald. There was the whole New Atheist versus Progressive beef, which, while it has mostly, for the most part, died down, there is definitely still some of that fire lingering on, as I've seen between him and Glenn and Reza. But essentially, seeing what's going on here, Sam Harris had this kind of email exchange with Ezra Klein that was supposed to be private, but he put him out for the public. Now, he did this with Noam Chomsky as well, and I had read most of Noam Chomsky's email exchange with him, and I read this entire one as well. But the truth, and I recommend, you should read the whole thing because it's very important, of course, to get the context of it. But the whole email exchange doesn't really seem to produce anything in terms of actual argument. I felt like the exchange between Sam and Noam had a lot of, there was actual disagreement on specific things and specific, what I would call some certain kind of philosophical things, and it got kind of interesting. This one, in my opinion, and you read that, and I want to know what you guys think. You tell me, do you think that this was productive in any way? Do you think that this resulted in anything in terms of actual kind of difference? And because I didn't see it at all. Now, I wanted to point out to two emails, because I'm not going to be able to read the entire email exchange to you, but these two emails seem to get at the very heart of this issue. Now, here's an email that Sam sent to Ezra Klein saying, "Perhaps some of this is due to the weakness of email as a channel of communication, but I find your responses increasingly flabbergasting. The authors didn't call me a, quote, racialist. They described my conversation with Murray as, quote, pseudoscientific racialist speculation. On your reading, this must be an example of them not calling me a pseudoscientist either. We seem to disagree about everything at this point, including the nature of our impasse. My main grievance isn't with Nisbet et al. Again, I consider their article so weak that I would never have considered responding to it, but for the fact that you published it and tweeted about it. No, my grievance is with you as a publisher. Clearly, you're the right person to debate the ethics of publishing articles like this, but I think you're probably right that it's unlikely to be a productive conversation. The only question is whether it would be interesting to listen to. It might be. In any case, assuming we're not doing a podcast, there's one thing I need to know. Why aren't you publishing Hayer's response if in fact you aren't? Now, Ezra responds saying this, okay? So, really quick to kind of break down what Sam is saying there, and this is why I chose this email, is because the issue that's kind of around this whole thing of IQ difference between races and stuff like that, the vast majority of the disagreement in here doesn't even really have to do with much of that, right? And that's what I mean by this doesn't really get to any of the difference of anything, is that they're not really arguing about that, but they're rather arguing about the ethics of what was written and whether or not what was written was either defamatory or libelous or, slanderous or any of that kind of stuff, if they lied and, painted Sam as a racist or not. That's the main beef that seems to be going on here, and this is why I stated that really this conversation became kind of pointless and kind of useless here. But here is what Ezra responds with. He says, the paragraphs you are citing are, as far as I can tell, these. This is an excerpt from the article. It says, quote, we hope we have made it clear that a realistic acceptance of the facts about intelligence and genetics, tempered with an appreciation of the complexities and gaps in evidence and interpretation, does not commit the thoughtful scholar to Murrayism in either its right-leaning mainstream version or its more toxically racialist forms. We are absolute supporters of free speech in general and an open marketplace of ideas on campus in particular. But poorly informed scientific speculation should nevertheless be called out for what it is. Protest, when founded on genuine scientific understanding, is appropriate. Silencing people is not. It says the left has another lesson to learn as well. If people with progressive political values who reject claims of genetic determinism and pseudoscientific or racialist speculation abdicate their responsibility to engage with the science of human abilities and the genetics of human behavior, the field will come to be dominated by those who do not share those values. Liberals need not deny that intelligence is a real thing or that IQ tests measure something real about intelligence, that individuals and groups differ in measured IQ, or that individual differences are heritable in complex ways. Now, in the email, he says, if you believe that you are endorsing, quote, the more toxically racialist forms of this argument, rather than the right-leaning mainstream version, which is not my interpretation of you, then I guess that, quote, pseudoscientific racial speculation could apply to you. But this simply is not calling you a racialist or white supremacist. I agree email isn't getting us any closer to a productive resolution here. The editor of the Big Idea section has his own thoughts about how to continue addressing these questions. I forwarded him Hayer's email, but he's under no more obligation to print it than you are to have Nisbet on your show. In terms of the podcast, happy to do it or not, just let me know. So the reason I highlighted those two emails, and again, I very strongly recommend you go. I 100% recommend go read the entire email exchange because, again, I can't read off to you the entire email exchange because it's a lot, right? But like I said, really, that's probably the two most important things that I chalked it down to. What Sam is trying to get at here is he's trying to say, you in Vox's article said that I was a racist or I was promoting these kind of racialist ideas and all this stuff, essentially calling me either some form of a white supremacist or a racist. But Ezra disagrees. He says no. So you have to make up what you will about this. Now, from what I get, I don't think that Ezra is calling him a racist, really. Now, however, to be honest, this I'm not even really sure about. So what he's trying to say is that he was endorsing this kind of right-leaning mainstream version, which wouldn't count as him being a racist. But he also states that, saying that he is kind of facilitating pseudo-scientific racial speculation is not calling him a racialist or a white supremacist. So it's really getting into some semantics here, really, I guess is what it seems like. And this argument has boiled on to something that really there's no need or necessity whatsoever, right? Again, I know Sam Harris is not a racist, right? And I'm sure you guys know that. And here's what I wanted to say really quick to kind of clear the air on this, because obviously Sam Harris has gotten into a lot of beefs with liberals. Noam Chomsky, Reza Aslan, Glenn Greenwald, and a bunch of other people like Ben Affleck. The Ben Affleck thing was a complete disaster. It's a complete fiasco. But there has been, I'm going to try to be as fair as I can here. There has been a lot of defamatory statements made about Sam Harris through Reza Aslan and Glenn Greenwald, and it really hurts me that Glenn Greenwald would do something like that, because I really look up to Glenn Greenwald, and I think that he's a really, really smart guy. So he's definitely had a ton of defamatory statements made against him, and his criticisms of Islam, for the vast majority part. Now, there are some things where I go, okay, like when he said that Islam was a motherlode of bad ideas. It is filled with just as many bad ideas as the Bible or any other Abrahamic religion, right? So that's something that I would be like. But when liberals start to get kind of sensitive about the criticisms that he makes about Islam, those he should not in any way, shape, or form be sensitive towards. Liberals should not be sensitive towards that. They should say that, yes, we have a lot of things to criticize in Islam. In fact, pretty much the whole doctrine, because it's filled with all of these kinds of sexism, misogyny, homophobia, etc., and it's wrong, and it's fucking vile. So there are areas like that where I give Sam Harris a lot of credit that other people won't give him. So I give him credit there, and I think that he's treated very unfairly in that area. However, I disagree with him on virtually everything foreign policy-wise, pretty much on all foreign policy. But I'm going to try to be fair here, and it seems, like I said, it really comes down here to semantics. Now, what ended up happening is it looks like Ezra Klein never actually gave any permission for these emails to be released, but as Sam Harris did in the Noam Chomsky exchange, he wanted to look like he didn't get beat and that he won. And just like in the Noam Chomsky exchange, it made him look bad. Now, this one especially made him look bad. While people say that he got kind of angry and ticked off and pissed off as the email exchange went on, I didn't think that he got all that angry, to be honest with you. I didn't really sense that. However, I do sense some of it there, but this really backfired because a lot of people are not on his side on this one, and the Sam Harris, and there was definitely, Harris bots and Harris cult. A cult may be a strong word, I will admit that, but he definitely had, a very strong core following that would praise him in every way, shape, and form. And again, remember, I am as fair as possible to Sam Harris because I'm going to say that he's not a racist, he's not, any kind of bigot or anything like that. He's none of that, right? The only beef I have with him is, policy substance disagreements on foreign policy. He's not a bigot Islamically. He's not a racist by any means, shape, or form. So, he is not having people on his side on this one is what I'm trying to say here. But what I wanted to finish off on with this is that this argument is virtually entirely useless. And if you don't think so, I want to know why. So Ezra Klein wanted to have a podcast the whole time, and Sam Harris doesn't really seem to want to have one. I don't know why. Now, he sent out a Twitter poll that most of his Twitter followers said yes, so he's going to supposedly end up doing a podcast with him. He should do a podcast with him because I want to understand what the fuck is really going on here. But I think the podcast will be better than this lengthy email, this kind of boring email exchange that doesn't really get to anything. But overall, this is essentially not really a big argument, and it's just semantics at the end of the day. And basically, Sam Harris is saying that he's making libelous claims and slanderous claims, while Ezra is saying that he is not. And Ezra himself has said, hey, if you want to have a debate of some kind about IQ differences within races, don't debate me because I'm not going to pretend like I'm some kind of expert on that. Debate someone else who is an expert on that. And that's the final reason I'm going to give you as to why this argument really doesn't even boil down to really anything substance-wise. It's more just semantics. And you can make of that what you will, but I do want to know what you guys think on this issue because it is very controversial, of course, and it's somewhat interesting, but please read the entire email exchange, read the article that Ezra Klein had on Vox, and let me know what you guys think down below in the comments.